Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern, and we have much to celebrate today because not only have we reached a personal milestone of hitting 2,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Well, here we are. The third in a now ongoing series of Five Nights at Freddy's' Pokémon videos. You know, when I started, I told myself this would be a fun video to do. I'm sure one video will be more than enough to satisfy the audience. I mean, how much Five Nights at Freddy's content is there anyway? What a fool I was. For you see, Five Nights at Freddy's has taken over my life in a number of ways. Not by the audience, but by these visions. These flashes of inspiration that startle me awake in the night. Foxy, Circus Baby, Springtrap, Ballora, the Endos, Sun, Moon, and Freddy. So many Freddys. Feverishly, I catch myself sprinting to my drawing tablet, and before I can even stop myself, it's done. And here you are. You've all been called here into this labyrinth of digital ink and color, misdirection and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit. A maze with no prize. Well, you don't even realize that you're trapped. And seemingly, neither do I. So welcome to the channel. I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern, and today we are jumping headfirst into another Five Nights at Freddy's characters as Pokemon video. Let's get started. For this series, I went into the direction of kind of the classic Five Nights at Freddy's type characters and expanded from there. And with that thought process, I knew that I would eventually have to take on some of the characters who are a little bit more foreign to me, or maybe we don't see quite as often. And that means characters like Circus Baby. I'd had a lot of people telling me that they'd seen a lot of ghost types and steel types in my designs before, so I knew Circus Baby was an opportunity to move away from that process, kind of do something a little bit different. I really dove into the idea of her making ice cream, and that being the main motif of this design. And so I wanted to make it feel like it was an ice cream clown. Very Mr. Rhyme-esque, but I wanted to take on that challenge. So I kind of cutesied her up a bit, made her a little bit more smaller, more diminutive, and gave her this overall shape of an ice cream cone. She won't have the same function as she does in the games of kind of swallowing people into her lure-like stomach, but instead just kind of being that creepy energy that we see in other Pokemon, similar to like Hypno and Trevenant and things like that, where there's almost this lore and process behind what they are as a whole, as opposed to the design elements brought into them. For example, Hypno, we know that story from Creepypasta where he's able to like lure kids into the woods and they go missing. I wanted that same type of energy here, something that looked like it could just be a perfectly normal Pokemon, but has some dark secret to it. And that really allowed me to dive again headfirst into this ice cream motif. I wanted to keep the pigtails because I am a sucker for that type of design element in Pokemon. If you've seen my collab video that I did a couple months back with Pewter City Jim, Angel, and Devi, then you'll know that I just love these giant pigtails on Pokemon. So I included that here, kind of gave it that drippy, frigidy type look. And then came the colors. How did I want to tackle the colors on this? Because Circus Baby goes through a lot of different changes throughout the series. We have regular Circus Baby, we have Scrap Circus Baby, we have the Emily Circus Baby, all these different motifs. How do we capture that across the board here? Well, I decided to go with the blue eyes because that is significant in the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, switching from the green eyes to the blue eyes or back, and what that may mean for the story. So I went with the standard blue eyes just because it fit kind of the color elements that I was going for. I thought about really incorporating that green and what that might look like, and in my opinion, it kind of threw off some of the design that I was going for. So I went against it. I know that there are going to be people who are upset saying, well, Circus Baby has green eyes, but truth be told, she sometimes has blue. So I went with the blue. I also liked incorporating these diamond type elements, these almost like frost crystals, because it gave a little bit more texture to the design and separates it out from other characters that we'll see in just a moment, while still keeping that playful clown motif. And so here we have in Frigid, taking that baby element and turning it into infant so that I could then include Frigid in the mashup of words and giving it that ice fairy type. I feel like it really deserved that, especially if I'm trying to move away from the steel, electric, and ghost type. Making this an ice fairy really, I think, kind of worked for the elements that we were going for. For the shiny, I did bring back those green eyes and gave it much more of a circus baby, scrap baby type vibe, so it has those oranges that become much more prominent when we see that design, as well as swapping out those blues for blacks. Almost gives it that grimy and tar-like appearance, which I really like. I think it really adds to the elements of this design. For the next character, I knew that this was going to be a little bit more of a challenge. I wanted to take on the concept of Ennard. He's one of my favorite designs and one that I've heard a lot of people kind of asking for in the comments and on the Discord. And I knew that it was going to be harsh because Ennard does not lend itself very well to being a Pokemon, in my opinion. He is gangly and covered in wires and this complex design, and so I really went and kind of tried to simplify that. What are the key elements and what are the key aspects that I want to bring into this that we also see in the initial concept? So I kept some of those shapes and changed a couple. I made his head a lot smaller, almost so that his body almost gives the impression of a big top. I also made these spikes along his neck just to give the element that this wasn't the type of Pokemon that is like super friendly or easily hugged. I don't know. It felt right when I did it, and I stand by that. So that shape also informed how I wanted to make the hat fit into the design. It's almost this large metal construct just with a clown head popped on top of it. He also was able to keep those tendrils that I like in the initial design. So he has hands, but he's made of these wires. So I was able to remove the hands and replace them with these wiry, metally, tentacle type things. Very much like his purpose is to grab you. And you can see in the sketch there that I also include this hole in the chest. Initially I was going for kind of a Deoxys type vibe, where he has that blank space, and the idea was he would shove people into him. Very spooky, very scary. I end up kind of swapping that out a little bit for something that I think works just as well, if not better. But the legs were something that I thought, this is a really fun design, and that ended up being a lot more complicated than I initially anticipated, but I do think it works. Almost having him climbing around and clambering on these weird robotic limb amalgamations, I think really intensifies the story of this character, intensifies the flavor that we're going for. It is a creepy design, one that I had to talk myself into a lot, one that I had to convince myself this could work as a Pokemon. Maybe it might work better as a UB, but it still works as a Pokemon. And so I went down that road, I allowed it to just kind of flow as it went, and decided if it doesn't work in the aspect that I want it to, I at least want it to work for me. I want to like this design. So I kind of threw everything out and went in and said, I'm going to enjoy what I'm making here. And I ended up really liking what came out of it. Does it feel like your traditional Pokemon? No, but arguably a lot of the Pokemon that we've gotten in recent generations also don't feel like traditional Pokemon. Anyone who's in the Discord may know my absolute disdain for Bramblegast and that whole line. I feel like it doesn't look like a Pokemon, and if it can be one and we can call it one, then this can get that same treatment as well. And so here we have Eternal, a combination of the words entrail, Ennard, and eternal. So it is very much this big clown metal Pokemon that, while again, I went in saying I don't think it feels very much like a Pokemon, at the end I think, yeah, it does. I think that it really fits the motif, maybe not of your typical Pokemon like a Miltank or a Geodude or a Pikachu, but it fits some of the vibe that we've seen in other designs, and I enjoy it. I of course had to make it Steel type because, I mean, look at the thing, and made it Psychic type as well for how it controls people. If you're familiar with the FNAF lore, it does make that a big part of the story in that it does control the security guard. For the shiny, I didn't want to change too much, so I just changed the hat and the nose to being blue. I don't know why. Do not ask me. It's just such a simplified design that I thought I don't want to stray away and make this like gold or neon green like Pokemon tends to love to do. but I wanted to make it something that it's one of those shinies that you can spot, but you have to take a second and think like, okay, is that what I'm looking for? Is that not? And I think that kind of fits for an Ennard-based Pokemon that's known for kind of hiding in plain sight, taking on the skin of another. After our first video, I was really surprised at how many people really attached themselves to Springrab, which is our Springtrap-based Pokemon. We actually had a lot of stuff going on with that in the Discord as well. It's a place that I really suggest that you head to if you're interested in this type of conversation. A user by the name of Scarvis, who actually has a YouTube channel that you can follow as well, I'll put that down in the description as well as show it here in the video, created a 3D model of our Springrab all within about a day. Very impressive, and I was just blown away by the creativity put into place there. And given that, and given how I had so many people just loving on Springrab in the comments of the last video where I had him, I knew that I had to do something about it. So I decided to draw a pre-evolution to Springrab, which is going to be based on Plush Trap. A little bit cuter, a little bit smaller, and I had to incorporate those sharp teeth as well. So I know that at the beginning of the video I said I was going to move away from steel and ghost types, but I often break my own rules here, and that's something that I feel I'm allowed to do. So I wanted to take Plush Trap and bring in some elements of Springrab. It was interesting. It was actually the first time that I ended up doing something like this in one of these videos, where I was doing a pre-evolution that I had to not only look at the inspiration of the prompt, but also the inspiration of the design that came before it. So I had to mix both those things together, which ended up being a little bit more difficult than I initially anticipated, but I think worked out in a couple different ways. I was able to bring in those wisps and kind of make it feel like it was a broken and detached kind of plush toy by removing the arms, which were a big aspect of the steel type to Springrab. So being that that was a huge aspect of the character, almost having these big metal pauldrons that were popping out of the plush suit, I decided to remove those and give it these floating arms instead. I made the ears a bigger aspect. I know Plush Trap is missing an ear, but I wanted to bring that in so that it looks like it gets more damaged as it evolves. So here we have Plusher. I really wanted to try and make the name associated to Springrab, but I just couldn't without just making it Plush Trap. It's also just a great name, so I went with Plusher just as like a short form to really capture the essence of what this character is. I took away the steel type and made it solely ghost so that it gains the steel type as it evolves, and made its shiny that same purplish color that we did for Springrab. I really like this design, and I think it's very different from a lot of the other rabbit type characters that we see in Pokemon. So this one was fully inspired by some conversations that we had in the Discord, specifically by user Molten Funtime. I put their comment here. This is their favorite character, which is of course Molten Freddy, and I struggled. I went in and was like, wouldn't this be fun and exciting to do, given the conversations we've had in the Discord and how much everyone's kind of really enjoyed the discourse there. And I immediately was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's a character that I'm not super familiar with. I actually didn't play Pizzeria Simulator. I don't know why. I think it was in that range of time when I was like, you know, Five Nights at Freddy's is veering way too far off from what the games were, and I let it go and was like, just seems like a fun game. Didn't realize that it was super lore heavy and it was going to inform the rest of the games moving forward. And I kind of realized that too late. Watched a couple playthroughs, watched some things like that, and I had to kind of on the back end familiarize myself with a lot of the characters in there, including Molten Freddy. So this character I had to research. I had to go through and figure out what I wanted to do, and eventually I came out with something that I was kind of happy with. I know he has this like elongated, wiry body, and I wanted to maintain a lot of that while moving away from some of the aspects that were just too similar to the other designs that we had. And as I played with it and got this design out, I actually realized midway through, I don't want to do this design. So I went with something drastically different. I kept the elongated body, but rather than having him stretched tall, I wanted him kind of crouched down, almost like a Jack-in-the-Box that had fallen over, or I don't know, like he's like crawling towards you, but it's kind of scampering on all fours. So I have him here, and I gave him a little bit more menacing of a grin. I wanted to capture the like sharp and angular teeth that he has. as well as removing a lot of that steel typing that he would have, given that I've used that so much. And being that he's Molten Freddy, wanted to really jump into the fire aspect. So I kept the head from the original version here and just kind of lined it out the way that I wanted. I knew that I wanted to keep those fiery wisps, and I knew that they would be a nightmare to kind of render out in color, but they seemed important to the design for me. I wanted this thing to feel like it was engulfed in fire and like dripping lava. I wanted that to be the case. And so I moved to these kind of like rocky outcroppings coming out of the back that informed what the hat would be, almost this column that emitted smoke out from the body, giving that lava vibe, fire vibe, these like obsidian type, stone type textures. And man, I started to really dig this design. Again, all the while watching videos and learning as much as I could about Molten Freddy. I think that we moved away a lot from the initial concept of this twisted mangle of wires, but really took in that molten aspect. And I'm hoping that it's something that Molten Funtime on the Discord can be happy with, because again, this was all brought up by that discourse in the community. If you're interested in being a part of those conversations and potentially having your ideas thrown into videos, join us on the Discord. We're a fun little community of people, and we just kind of joke around a lot. We recently put Poke2 in there, so you're able to catch Pokemon in the Discord and build up your collection. If you haven't seen that plugin, it's a ton of fun. And I am constantly seeing my favorite Pokemon captured before I even realize they popped up, and getting all the time in the world to capture Pokemon that I don't like. I don't know what it is, but the Poke2 gods are not on my side when it comes to the Discord server. But here we are, kind of rendering out this design, going a little bit more subtle with that lava look, and then going over with this almost water type texture just to give it a little bit more liquidation. I didn't know what I was wanting with this. I knew that I wanted it to be lava-esque, and I was trying to find ways to make that happen. And just kind of the rendering of this whole design was very different. It was a lot of experimentation, even down to like that smoke that you just saw, going with a more cloudy brush than the actual hard lines that I'm used to. It was a lot of learning as I went and hoping that things kind of worked together. I took some time to kind of look at Pokemon like Slugma and Macargo, just to make sure that I'm capturing that lava energy and in the same way that Pokemon already does. And I moved away from it a little bit because it felt I don't know. It felt like the going off the Pokemon design for lava solely wasn't capturing the energy that I wanted here. It wasn't quite as ferocious, and I did want this to be ferocious. I got this idea that the head would be white because it was this stone that was cooled. And I know that that would probably mean that this would be a rock type, but I had other things in mind for where I wanted to go, and rock type felt like it was just kind of smacked on, so I ended up going a different route than that. But the idea is that this is a molten abomination that may at some point have been a different looking Pokemon, but over time and intense heat it has become fully lava-fied, where these black outcroppings are kind of the semi-cooled portions of whatever is underneath it, and these white sections like the face and the toes and what I'll do with the paws here in a little bit are the ultra-cooled sections that have kind of adapted to this temperature. So this is Moltedi, the molten Pokemon. It is fire and dark type because I wanted to keep that energy of it just having this shadow self to it, very much like we see with the Molten Freddy in-game. So I also made the shiny this greenish, blackish color, kind of signifying that decay that happens to these animatronics. After all, they're found. They're not built at the pizzeria. They're not refurbished in any way. They're just kind of found and left to rust in that way. So I wanted to capture that with the shiny as well. This thing is absolutely massive, which is another reason that I wanted it kind of hunched over in the design. You can see from the silhouette there, this thing would be well over 10 feet tall where it's standing. So instead it is hunched and kind of clambering as it moves. For the final design of this episode, I wanted to go a little bit more vague. I wanted to grab something that wasn't quite so tangible in the games. And again, after some conversing in the Discord, I think that we found something really, really fun to play with, which was the idea of this convergent Rotom that is based on the Lost Souls and the remnant of the games, specifically the VR game. So in this version, I took away that little pointy spike and took away all those like hyper angular points on Rotom and instead replaced them with these wisp type shapes that we've seen in a couple of the other designs that we've done. I wanted to give it this very sad type of eye shape just constantly because it is a lost soul, and given the lore of the games, it was not a very happy passing. So it's very round, very cutesy, very demure, and I wanted it to really fit that same vibe as Rotom outside of those things. So it has this aura that's like gonna be a purplish color, and rather than give it these lightning bolt shaped hands, I played with the shape quite a lot. I wanted to give it almost like these Reaper Scythe type shapes that still have that wisp to them. But aside from that, it's not too much different from your average Rotom. For the main color, I went with like a whitish color because I wanted it to feel like your classic ghost type look. And yeah, I think there's not much more to say about this. Ever since we got convergent forms and the absolute perfection that is Toad School, I love the idea. I just haven't had a really good design concept in mind for use. Until today with Revenim. So the name Revenim spelt backwards is Miniver? I don't quite know how to pronounce that, but it is the phrase used for the white coats of animals that turn white in winter to better adapt to the snow. And that name actually comes from the concept of a small and very shy ghost. So much like Rotom is motor backwards, Revenim is Miniver backwards. Very cool meaning, very cool opportunities there. For the shiny, I made it that same reddish color that we see in a shiny Rotom of the same typing. I also made it the remnant Pokemon to grasp onto that main idea that we had going on. It is a normal ghost type, and I know exactly what you're asking. What shapes does Revenim take? How does it possess machinery? Because we have a lot of machines in this series, and so how would that work? I don't know. Much like I've done in the last videos that we've done for this series, I need your help in the comments. Let me know down in the comments what you think this game mechanic would look like. Also, let me know what the dex entries and abilities might be for the others. You guys always do such a fantastic job at making sure that these Pokemon feel alive. So make sure that you head down to the comments and let me know. Also, check us out on the Discord. A lot of the designs for this episode came from conversations had in that place. You can also find me at Patreon, Ko-fi, all those fun places where you can support me and the stuff that I'm doing. The Ko-fi's been kind of exploding recently, which I'm super pumped about, and we've been getting a lot of commissions through there as well. So I've been very, very busy, but still wanted to get this Five Nights at Freddy's video out. With all of that said, it sounds like you know where to find me, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.